Today we sit down with Hartley House counselor Claire to discuss how survivors can navigate potentially difficult situations around the holidays. Claire joined Hartley House in 2021 after completing her clinical internship with Hartley House during her Master of Social Work program at the University of Maryland in Baltimore. As a counselor in the clinical department, she provides trauma-informed support to survivors of intimate partner violence, sexual abuse, human trafficking, and childhood abuse, and other forms of power-based interpersonal violence. Claire co-facilitates the intimate partner violence and the Healing Pride support groups and is deeply committed to creating safe, supportive spaces where individuals can heal and reconnect with themselves after abuse. Having grown up in Montgomery County, Maryland, and moved to Frederick in middle school, Claire finds it especially meaningful to serve and support the community that she lives in. Claire, thank you so much for being on the Hartley House podcast this month. We're so excited that you're here to talk about how survivors can prepare for a safety plan during the holidays, and this is coming out right in November, so hopefully perfect timing for people. Before we get into that, can you share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for just having me, and it's so exciting to be able to work with you. And but yeah, my name is Claire. My pronouns are she, her. I am a counselor at the Hartley House, and I've been with the agency for almost 4.5 years. I started out as an intern and was hired once I was licensed. So really excited to be here and spend time with you.
And I know I said it in your bio, but you got your degree in counseling, right? And then you were an intern.
Social work.
Okay,
Yeah.
Masters of Social Work.
Yeah, so I have an undergrad, like a bachelor degree, and my master's in social work.
Awesome. What got you into the power-based violence space?
Yeah, so it's so interesting you ask it because I was thinking about it this morning. I actually had a cousin way back when who worked at the agency, and I thought it was the coolest job. I loved hearing her talk about it in the little ways that she could. But ultimately it was my internship with my master's program, and Hartley House was local. When I was researching the agency, I fell in love with the mission. I think any social worker, when you're first starting, it's like you're so passionate, and just to be connected to a space that is directly impacting the community in just such a profound way, just really called to me. And I was just happy to have the internship, and then to be offered a position was beyond.
That's every intern's dream.
Yes. Yes, it was fantastic. And the staff is amazing in the clinical department. And at the time, the supervisor was like everything you could want in a workplace.
That's beautiful to hear. And I know, so I've worked in Montgomery County and Baltimore City and Baltimore County, and Frederick, population-wise, I feel like is smaller than in those areas. But when I share with people, oh, I work for Hartley House, they immediately know the organization. They immediately know the work that we're doing to help the people that are in our community. And it feels so valuable to be able to give back to the place where you are living.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. And just to feel that like interconnectedness, I think also as like the true roots, I think, of Frederick, and just to be a part of something that's quite bigger than just like myself, and that is social work, right? And so it's a beautiful opportunity for me to be a part of the agency as long as I have been. But yeah, I love it.
Well, we're so glad you've been there for 4.5 years and continue to do the amazing work that you do. But I wanted to get into the topic for today, which again is preparing survivors for the holiday season. Can you talk a little bit about why the holiday season may be triggering for survivors?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the holidays are hard enough, right? I think for any individual, they are layered, and let alone then adding the complexities of whether if you're actively trying to establish safety while you're in a situation, or recently out of a situation, recently gone no contact. It is so important to begin to just invite a question, right, of what does safety look like for me? It could be related to the amount of time we spend at a gathering. It could be, how do I maintain that boundary as I go into the holiday season? Because there's so many, not only familial expectations, but societal expectations around the holidays, and just to hold space and be so present for how even like media, right, shifts around the holidays. We see that family experience, and that's just not always possible when you are a survivor or actively navigating power and control within the familial unit, or you've really took a stance and had a significant boundary with that abusive family member, not only just an intimate partner. So it's daunting to think about, wow, my holiday experience maybe looks different than the past, or it looks different than other families, right, or other people. And to experience that otherness is also a component of why a safety plan is so important, because it makes us feel isolated.
Absolutely. I think you really hit the nail on the head, right? There's so many images, marketing advertisements about this like happy family that's smiling and eating a meal together or opening up presents on the holiday. And it could feel really, like you said, isolating, like, oh, that depiction is what everybody is getting during this time, but my situation may not look like that. And that comparison is really difficult to hold, especially when somebody has gone through such a traumatic experience surrounding the family unit.
Absolutely. And I think it's why we consider different forms of safety plans too, because it's so important to sit with that emotional weight, right? Of, my situation looks different because I made a really courageous decision and I set a boundary that ultimately cultivated safety for me. Or, I am navigating a situation that's ongoing because right now that's what's safe. And it's to be really present with the internal as well as the external components of safety, depending on where you find yourself.
And I see a lot, and I love your take on this, is that setting a boundary and being courageous often in the moment feels like fear. Oftentimes there's a lot of fear and internal turmoil that goes with setting a boundary, especially if you've set boundaries before and they have not been respected, or those people have potentially retaliated against you for setting that boundary. So also wanted to share too that if you're feeling fear or like turmoil or like, oh my gosh, am I doing the right thing? That I feel like that often accompanies being brave.
Absolutely. And it's such a startling human experience to do something that's ultimately positive for you, and yet it feels icky, right? It feels so uncomfortable and it's counterintuitive. And again, another reason why an internal safety plan might be really important. But yeah, I mean, boundaries are also a privilege in knowing how to set them, right? That's something that has to be taught to us. We have to have the privilege of being in conversations where people talk to us about consent, not only with our physical like proximity, but emotions and time and our day-to-day experiences. So it's absolutely uncomfortable when we first start to set those boundaries in relation to all the factors you already mentioned and more, I'm sure.
Yes. And I would imagine too, not always the case, but I could see that setting a boundary, if that's something that somebody has not done before, how that could be really jarring for the other people around them. That isn't to say that you shouldn't set that boundary, but I could see there being pushback from other family members or friends.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. Which then adds a whole nother layer of complexity to honoring the validity of that boundary, right? Of like, okay, I'm doing this and I know that I should or want to do this, but everyone in my family unit, right, is saying, well, that's so and so, right? Like they care about you, right? They love you, right? Why are you doing this, right? And to really honor when we're navigating family dynamics, especially again around the holidays, it's all, you're going to come across those conversations like, why aren't you talking to so and so? Why did you make this decision? Why aren't you coming, right? And navigating, even setting a boundary within that conversation is so uncomfortable, because maybe it's the first holiday season that you've decided to do things differently because from last holiday season, like that did not work. That did not work, right? We have to do something different. And yet we're naturally gonna, if we're in a system that has dysfunction, we're naturally going to have pushback from other folks. And so then how do we find internal safety with that?
Mm-hmm. And so with that in mind, could you talk about potential triggers for that, right? So if somebody's going into this holiday season, they haven't had a good experience in their past and they want to set boundaries this year, is there anything that they should be self-aware of as they're going into this holiday season? Any triggers that may pop up for them that may trigger that internal discomfort?
Yeah, I think that's such a complex question, because when we consider how trauma-related triggers or dysregulation that stems from traumatic experiences, we cannot always predict all of them. Mm-hmm. So I always like to land in a space of how can we invite tenderness to ourselves, self-compassion to ourselves, because you might find that a trigger is relating to a certain store, right? A certain
maybe smell.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, like smells.
I know that sounds weird, but there's a lot of smells related to holidays.
Absolutely, right? And I always think about the senses, right? Like how is it what we see, what we smell, maybe even conversations, right? Or perhaps it is knowing that in the past when I'm around a certain individual, I get really uncomfortable. I think it's being cognizant of how loneliness might impact you, and how you can take note and ownership of what's different this year. Because I would imagine what is different will ultimately lend itself to being triggering. If we observe it in someone else, right? Or someone else's family, or just noticing, right? Like perhaps we always would go to a certain holiday party and we're choosing not to, or we don't just because of exiting a relationship. And then that evening comes around and we're really irritable. Our belly hurts. We don't want to do anything, right? We're like, why am I feeling this way? And just inviting a tender thought of, oh, because in years past, I was somewhere different than where I am now. And the body shows up. And the body will tell you, even if the mind hasn't caught up yet. So it's being cognizant, what is different? What do you associate with the holidays from the past? And inviting tenderness, inviting self-compassion, speaking kindly to yourself. I love that you brought up the body sensations that can happen, right? And to be just trying to be aware of how you feel in your body in that moment when you feel a difference this year if you set that boundary, right? I love what you said, that oftentimes before our brain catches up, we can feel it in our body. Maybe a stomach ache, maybe our jaw is really clenched, or our shoulders are up against our ears, right? There's so many different ways that our body is trying to tell us that something's just different. Absolutely. And to also hold space and be present with survivors that are really disconnected from the body's experience, right? And so sometimes we do have like, oh, well, my belly always hurts, right? It's like, And yet what a beautiful awareness you have. You know, I hear all the time, like, you ask me where that feeling is in my body and it's cut off. And again, I always offer self-compassion. Like, it makes a lot of sense, right? That your body and your mind aren't necessarily collaborating right now, because perhaps at one time it was really unsafe and unsustainable for you to notice how this unsafe situation shows up in your body. So just to notice, like, to go back to like how I was saying, like, maybe our belly hurts all the time, and just noticing, like, does it increase in intensity? Is there any way that we can be mindful of that and how we fuel our body and what foods we take in? So doing what you can with the information you have in relation to where you're at in your healing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I feel like that it's not necessarily directly talking about self-care, but I think being kind to ourselves and being and trying to step into that awareness can be a form of self-care. Are there other things that people can do in terms of self-care during this time?
Yeah, I think when we consider self-care, especially right now in the world that we live in, we see it everywhere, right? There's so much like self-care
and sorry for the people who are just listening and not seeing the audio. I want to point out that Claire put self-care, my goodness, self-care in quotes.
Yes, in quotes, absolutely. Because of the social media impact, right? And I always like to simplify self-care, right? It does not have to be this radical, huge thing, or, you know, whatever social media portrays it as this huge attainable thing of calm and zen. More times than not, our self-care is just, how are we refueling, right? How are we intentionally and directly talking to ourselves in relation to an activity? So it might be taking a longer shower than normal if you can. It might mean, you know, setting up 5 minutes before your day to have that cup of coffee or that cup of tea and have a silent moment to yourself. It might be like getting an expo marker and writing a word or a mantra on your window and saying it to yourself as you brush your teeth. It does not have to be extravagant or something you buy necessarily. It can be going outside if it's not too cold, and putting your feet on the earth, right? And just really intentionally taking a moment to yourself. And I always like to invite people to have a conscious thought of, I am doing this to honor what I need right now. And it could be something as simple as, like, before you get out of the car, if you do choose to go to a family event, we take that deep breath and we say, I am strong, right? Or I can do hard things. And we get out of the car.
Or doing it in the bathroom in the middle of...
For sure. Absolutely.
In the middle of the event, if you need that reminder.
Yes. Set a timer. Every 90 minutes, we go into the bathroom. Absolutely. Splash water on your face, you know, run cold water on your hands and really take a moment. Nothing else matters except for the water running through your fingertips. You know, I'm also a big believer in sweet treats. Take the extra cookie. Take the cookie on your way out. Like, I survived that gathering. And thank you. I will take this cookie.
I agree with that 100%. Please take the cookie, take the treats, enjoy.
But I think, like, bigger self-care can also be calling the hotline, right? Before or after the gathering that you go to, or having a plan, you know, a safety plan, even if it's really informal, is a form of self-care, because we're acknowledging that we need additional supports. We are deserving of additional supports. We're having a hard time for an extremely valid reason.
There are so many things I want to talk about that you shared. The first being, I love that you are focusing on self-care that isn't necessarily something that you have to go out and buy. And I'm not saying that that isn't a true part of someone's self-care routine, right? Like the first thing that comes to mind is getting a bath bomb or doing your nails, which are all wonderful things to do. But especially during the holidays, it can be a really financially hard time for people for many different reasons. I know for families, it could be a really hard time because you are spending money, extra money, right, on gifts for kids or for family members. And so have grace with yourself as well that self-care can look differently depending on your financial situation. And sometimes the best self-care is to take things off of your plate if you are able to as well, right? So I love that you're like, we don't need to schedule this hour-long thing in my already really busy, packed schedule. It could just be 5 minutes here and there, right? Another thing I like to point out too is if you are comfortable and you have a good relationship, maybe with your boss or someone, saying like, hey, you know, is there a way that we can change up my tasks for this month? I know going into it, I've got a lot going on and like maybe there's something that I can revisit come January.
Absolutely. And that's a form of a boundary, right? And especially when we're considering safety, if we have people in our lives that we know we can trust and will show up for us, I highly encourage talking about what is happening in an appropriate way, right? Like that information that you share, one person might get more of the story than others, and I totally honor that. But the more people we can have like in our corner and knowing that we're just navigating a lot, right? Like I said, as we started, right? Like the holidays are hard for everyone, regardless, for a multitude of reasons. So talk to people, have people in the know, so to speak, like in the know. And that is a part of your safety plan, right? I know I can text my boss and say like, hey, I'm going to log in 30 minutes late today. Or like, hey, you know, just to your point, like, can we push this to January? You know, and just being cognizant of what is within my window of capacity right now. And I'm doing everything I can, right? I do my 5 minutes of intentional time. I like seek out my higher power. I take a moment of grounding. And yet my window of capacity remains not where I want it to be. Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense for what you're walking through. So who can we start to have, you know, in the know and on your team so that you can say, you know, hey, this is what's going on today or tomorrow.
Yes, absolutely. So if that feels like a safe option for you, reaching out to your closest person, right? And if that doesn't feel like a safe option for you, I love, Claire, that you said call the hotline.
Yeah.
The hotline can be that safe space for you as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially during any time of the year, but especially during the holidays, you know, and they want to support you, right? They are folks who genuinely want to be present with you and talk it through with you, and ask you like, hey, what's your safety plan, right? Like what do you have already in your toolbox that we can utilize in this call?
Absolutely. So, of course, I know we always talk about our hotline, but it's a really, really great option for people, especially when you do need more support. And I loved that you talked about how it can be really hard to ask for support, but you are worthy of asking for support.
Yes. And I hold so much space for the complexity there, right? When we're navigating power and control and interpersonal power-based violence in relation to talking to other people and telling other people, and how overwhelming that can be, and feeling as though like that's not an option, because in the past when I've done that, I ultimately was actually really unsafe, right? And to really honor that experience and perhaps also bring about an awareness of, okay, what's different today? What's feasible today? You know, we can get as creative as possible. I'm big on like code words and code phrases. So if we have that one safe person that has remained in contact with us, or that we've been able to foster the relationship even through whatever dynamic you're navigating that has power and control within it, if we can have a code word of like, hey, I think I left my Tupperware at your house. It's super benign, but that person knows like, oh, that person sent that code phrase.
Tupperware.
Yeah, Tupperware. I'll say, I'm like, Tupperware, pineapples. Like, what can we like throw in there?
Truly any,
And
like,
an
any word
emoji.
works.
Like,
That's a really good one.
I do emoji. Like, I'll talk with folks about like, can we identify just like a really benign like emoji that when you send that, they know that you need a check-in later, or you need additional supports, maybe, you know, as far as sending help to you, right? But that's a bigger safety plan element. But always try to tap into the resources that you have and be really present with yourself of like, hey, it's uncomfortable for a reason, because when I've talked about it or when I've sought help before, ultimately I became unsafe. And that is such a complex layer that as an agency we navigate all the time with our survivors we work with.
Yes, that trust can be, for lack of a better term, broken from past experiences. So just a reminder that calling the hotline, we're not going to ask questions or like poke fun of your story at all. We're there to hear you, listen to you, and really be in that space with you and provide whatever you need, even if that's just us sitting on the phone call with you and you're not talking.
Absolutely. Just being present with you, right? And knowing that sometimes we don't need feedback. We just need held space.
Absolutely. Yes. And again, I really appreciate you acknowledging the level of courage that takes
Absolutely.
to dial that phone number or to reach out to somebody and share how you're feeling, especially if that's been dismissed in the past.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Or if it created an unsafe situation, right? If someone found out that we called, right? Or something in that nature. Or as a family unit, maybe there's a intersectionality of culture and family values that completely conflict with talking about struggling, right? Or talking about things that you're navigating that are unsafe, talking about family problems, right? If there is a huge rule, an unspoken rule in the family or in the dynamic of we don't talk about things outside of here, reaching out for help feels impossible because it's not feasible, right? It's not encouraged. It's not normalized within that dynamic.
Absolutely. And a good reminder to all of the listeners too, that our services are primarily confidential. We do have to break confidentiality when it comes to threats of suicide, homicide, or child abuse, but we're not going to share your name, right? We're not going to share your personal information with family members. I think that's a big fear that people think, oh, if I call and I share my story, is it going to get out in the community?
Yeah, absolutely. No. And that confidentiality is paramount. And I think when we consider transparency with a survivor, I know that, you know, I don't work in the hotline, but I know that that's one of the first things that they share, right? Is the limitations of confidentiality that you have spoken to around ideations or reportable disclosures. But in addition to that, no one can call the hotline and ask about you, right? And it's not confirmed or denied. And that is your right to confidentiality. And that is so important when we are considering maybe it's the first time someone reached out and talked to someone about what they're navigating. And we try our best to really be transparent about that and be present with the individual of, you know, I want to talk about it. And right now, this is what I feel comfortable talking about.
I think another important point to bring up too that I've heard in my social circles is the fear that maybe it'll show up on insurance if you go to see someone. And just a reminder, I don't know if I've shared this yet on the podcast, but Hartley House doesn't take insurance. All of our services are free. And so the knowledge of going to a counselor is not going to show up on a health bill or anything of that nature.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's, again, just speaking to an element of how power and control can be so nuanced, and why transparency and, the protocols that we have at the agency are so important when we're trying to reach out and connect with as many survivors as possible.
So I very much appreciate that. And that kind of lends into this next question that I have for you is, can you think of any other practical self-care tips that survivors can implement that we haven't talked about yet? You did some really good ones about brushing, or I guess splashing water on your face, letting cold water run through someone's hands, or even holding ice and just focusing on that sensation. Anything else that you think would be helpful?
I guess my mind immediately wanders to grounding versus mindfulness, right? And just considering the difference of the two, right? So grounding is usually senses. It is redirecting our conscious mind to the present moment, being aware of the chair we're sitting on, our feet on the floor, what can we hear, what can we smell. We can do mindfulness and then the opposite is mindfulness, right? Where we are being intentional in the moment of just being present with the activity in front of us. Like eating, we can engage in mindful eating where nothing matters except for that Snickers bar, right? We can also do it, always throw it out there. Like we can do doing dishes, doing laundry, just really intentionally. Like I think dishes, we have so many different textures and water and soap. And if it's not triggering, I always encourage mindfulness while just doing daily activities. And then another self-care I always like to plug is movement. And it does not have to be running a 5K.
But if that's your thing, go for it.
Sure.
But that's not many people's things.
No, absolutely not. And I don't get me wrong, I love a good run, but I recognize it's not everyone's cup of tea. But we can do really gentle stretching. YouTube is a wonder. We can literally go on YouTube and type in like a 5-minute stretch. And we just do that for 5 minutes or 2 minutes.
Shout out, Yoga with Adrienne is a wonderful free resource on YouTube.
That's fantastic.
She's been doing free yoga on YouTube for like probably more than 10 years now.
Wow.
So she's got a bunch of different videos. And I believe she has one for like calming the body, calming stress.
It's beautiful. So, I love that. Yeah, I am a big Dr. Ariel Schwartz. She's a somatic psychologist. She has a YouTube channel and she does vagus nerve yoga. Totally plug her at any chance I can. But yeah, doing just a gentle stretch, or I'm a big believer of like dance parties. Like make a playlist that represents the mood, right? So if you feel really like low and shut down and we turtle in, find a playlist, make a playlist for that. If you're super musically inclined, dance, move the body, listen to it, and then maybe we're the opposite. Maybe we get really irritable and feel really mobilized and activated. Make a playlist for that, that embodies that for you, and dance, until you're like sweating. And then before you know it, it's like, okay, I've ticked off so many boxes, right? Like, really like turtled into myself, present with my body, love music, check that off, and then dance party, which is also kind of a workout, right? So,
I call it a disco party and implement that. So yes.
Silent disco in your house if you need, right? Like put headphones in. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I don't know if I'm remembering the exact terms that you use. I think it was it self-care versus mindfulness, or what was it?
So it's grounding versus mindfulness. So when we think about self-care, consider it like an umbrella term. And then underneath that is like all these different techniques. Aspects, techniques that you can use. So there's grounding, which is, again, redirecting the body to the present.
So would you say that's more if somebody's like actively feeling upset or, for lack of a better word, triggered? Would you say that would make more sense? Or
I would say absolutely, because when we're experiencing a trigger, what's usually happening in our mind is, unfortunately, the limbic system takes over, and the body thinks it's in the past. The body will be reliving that experience, even though you're in the present moment. That's why it can feel so dysregulating and so dismantling of our safety. And so when we utilize grounding, it's quite literally saying like, no, I'm here, I'm safe. I just smelled something that took my body to the past. Or I heard something that took my body to the past. I saw someone that took my body to the past. And this is like a very like simplified way of thinking about it. But grounding just reorients us back to the present. I'm here, I'm in this room with Caroline. I can feel the chair. I can hear my own voice in my headphones. It's all these sensory experiences that just redirect us back to here. So those are grounding practices.
And then on the flip side
is mindfulness.
Yes.
Which I think is a big buzzword right now, right? Everyone.
For sure.
Yes. And it's like, what actually is mindfulness, right? It's a great question. It is the experience of being non-judgmental of just our current state of being. So this could also be when we're triggered, but that would be a really interesting exercise to do without a professional, right? Where we're sitting in the distress of the trigger. Depending on where you're at in your healing journey, you might have a plan with like your counselor, or you might know yourself so you can really sit with it for a moment. But I always like to think of like mindfulness as our way to quiet everything else that is bzzing in our minds, right? So we are thinking about the future, right? We're pondering the past, which is what trauma likes to do to us, right? It's a hyper awareness of the future because of what has happened to us in the past. So it keeps us really in this place of
push and pull.
Yes, and never here. So when we can use mindfulness, it gives us an opportunity to say like, wow, like I'm just here like washing the dishes, and I can feel the soap, right? And so we bring in the senses as well, but it's just the mindful awareness of maybe a thought pops in, like, nope, all I'm thinking about is doing the dishes. All I'm thinking about is folding this shirt. Or maybe our mind starts to wander and it's like, no, all I'm thinking about is this song, right? That happens to me in the car all the time. I'll be like thinking about something. It's like, oh, I just missed this song. Like, and I have to replay.
Gotta go back.
No, I literally replay that. I literally go back and I replay it because I'm like, that's so messed up. But mindfulness, one might argue, right, is the active practice of redirecting your thoughts to only thinking about what's happening in that moment.
And now what I like to share with people too, and I'd love to get your thoughts, is that I think also that planned self-care, the planned 5 minutes extra of just sitting there and having my coffee can be a way to help lessen those triggers and have glimmers in throughout our day. Can you share a little bit about glimmers?
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. Yeah, so that's coined from polyvagal. So that's a therapeutic modality that originated from Deb Dana. And the thought there, right, is our vagus nerve is a huge component of how our bodies experience the world, right? So like butterfly, everything from butterflies in your stomach to,
when you're getting
out.
ready to, I was going to say when you're getting ready to take a math test.
Yes, absolutely.
For me.
Yes, and we absolutely. So, but when we are in ventral, so this is like a state of regulation that they use in polyvagal, we can access laughter, we can be playful, And so within that, we have experiences of glimmers, which is just pure joy, right? Moments of calm. And that could be a moment, right, where, at least for me, it's like when everything is done and I can finally, sit on the couch and just be, right? Or I get to, like at the end of my run, and I can just walk, right? It's like this calm, right? It's this glimmer. It's joy, right? It's okay. I can be present in this feeling. And I always like to also consider how can we add gratitude to it, because we're going to look back on that glimmer when we are feeling triggered, right? Or after a trigger, or maybe after a really difficult conversation, right? With the holidays of, wow, I just got off the phone with that person and it did not go well. How do I find gratitude in moments like that? It's thinking back on those glimmers. It's thinking back on those times where we felt so joyful, so at peace, so grounded in ourselves. And you did that for yourself. No one else can cultivate a glimmer for you. So, it's a beautiful practice to remember going into the holidays with all the hustle and bustle and noise around us is, how do I cultivate a glimmer?
I love that. And that empowerment of, I can create that glitter, gosh, glimmer.
I love that though. I love that. If glitter works for you.
If you love the arts and crafts, which I genuinely do, glitter can be your glimmer.
Yes. I love that though. That's amazing.
And again, to plug, well, there's not as much glitter as I thought there was. But again, I know I always plug, if you are not watching on YouTube we always have another piece of art that we would love for you to see. This one was specifically for our event called Take Back the Night, where it was actually a community art. So people came and they drew houses on an already painted by a survivor picture that depicted the night sky and a bunch of Hartley houses. So
I love this tree house.
I know.
That's so sweet.
People get really creative with it. Oh, and here's another house with a tree. Gosh, that's so good.
Wow.
Well, I'm not that good with my arts and crafts.
No,
but
not at all. But I love that. It's amazing. I'm the same.
Yeah. And so I know we talked a lot about what people can do to honor what they're feeling throughout this time, and kind of walking through what is an emotional safety plan during the holidays. Do you have any recommendations for people on when they know or when they feel like they should seek out extra support other than maybe that plan they created?
I think if you're asking yourself the question, right? I think if we're having thoughts of, I can't do this, this is too much. If we are in a space of not being able to get through tasks, right? Or be successful at work, or we're not wanting to connect with others, I think that would be a really important time to reach out, even if it's just calling the hotline, even if it's calling up your friend and saying, I'm really not doing well. Lean on those safe people, those people that cultivate security for you. If safety isn't as accessible. But I think if we're asking ourselves the question, if we're thinking super singular thoughts, right? Like, I can't do this. This isn't possible. I would really, really encourage you to consider a way to break through that isolation, even if it's just texting 988. That is such an accessible tool and support that we have right now, where you don't have to talk. I get it, right? We don't want to talk. Sometimes it's hard.
Especially us youngins, even though I'm not that young.
For sure. I literally am that person. I'll see someone call me and I'm like, I'll stare at it as they're calling.
Same. I'm like,
Or when you text someone and they automatically
flight,
call. No, literally. I'm like, why? Who calls someone right after they text you? Who does that? But people do it apparently. So texting, right? finding creative ways to break through that. But yeah, I think we're asking ourselves the question, right? I think if you do create a safety plan, maybe it's super informal, that I can understand that, right? Like just doing that as an individual. But even then, I would really encourage folks, if we have just even an informal safety plan, can we find one person that also knows about what is happening? Even if it's just one person, because that ultimately, we might utilize the safety plan and we still might not be okay. And so calling that person is going to be so important.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate you bringing that up too, that it's okay if things change and don't go according, like line by line, according to the safety plan or the measures that you put in place, right? So I love your term of using maybe a loose or not as structured safety plan to also take the weight off your shoulders that you don't need to follow it to a T. And sometimes you look at that plan and you go, that's not going to work for me today. And that's okay.
Absolutely. Or something happens that you never would have expected, and when we consider triggers, a lot of the time when it comes to trauma, we don't expect them. And we don't realize that we're triggered until we're in it and we're like, oh my, and it's like, oh, I'm triggered, right? And so we don't always have the accessibility, right, to what we have at home, right? And so we might be driving, we might be at work. Who can we touch base with? What's a touch point we can have? What's something else that you can utilize in your toolbox in those moments where it's like, wait, this isn't happening how I envisioned it. I hold so much space for that. I so get that because people are unpredictable, especially within like that dysfunctional dynamic. You never know. And it's really hard to cultivate safety when safety is being infringed upon by someone else, because that is outside of our control. Someone else is outside of our control. We cannot always plan for what they're going to do or how they might show up.
And that in of itself can be really emotionally taxing, right? I know I've personally been like thinking through every single scenario that could ever happen, and then like none of them happen, and something I never thought about then happens, and it's like, sometimes you can try so hard to plan for something, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the way it's going to go.
And it's not a failure.
Correct.
If you didn't think of it.
Yes.
It is not something that you did. That is not a reflection of you and where you're at in your healing journey. That is just, unfortunately, one of those aspects that's outside of our control. It's like insurance, right? Like consider like a safety plan like insurance. We never want to use it. We can, watch for deer. We can, stop at every red light, right? Whatever it is. And yet we still have those unpredicted experiences that show up. And so we have that backup plan. We have something else. And it's not a reflection of you. It's not your fault that the deer hit your car.
Right.
It's not your fault that, whatever happened, that's not your fault. It's just stepping into, again, tenderness for yourself. Self-compassion for yourself. The way we talk to ourselves is so important, especially when we consider elements that are outside of our control, like someone else.
Absolutely. Someone else, how they may be talking to us. And especially if that's maybe a caregiver figure in your life, it could be really hard to step out of that and say, no, I deserve to be spoken to better, and I'm going to speak to myself kinder because I deserve that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because especially in family dynamics, right? It's so interesting. We can do so much work on ourselves, and then we find ourselves back in that family gathering, right? Or that unit of people, and shoot, does our body go right back to that role, right? Our experience goes right back, and we walk out of that, it's like, what just happened? I practiced this with my people, I role played the conversations. I was going to set the boundaries. I was only going to be there for an hour. I'm leaving. It's 4 hours later. Like, what happened? Like, whoa, you survived. You survived. You got through that. It didn't go to plan. That's okay. Because that is healing, and it happens, and the body shows up sometimes in a way, especially when we get in those situations with people we're super familiar with. It just happens. So having the plan after the fact, calling the hotline, calling a friend, something also you can consider is having lotion in your car. Like I always say like a peppermint lotion or like chapstick. That's the senses, right? So putting the lotion on your hands, if it's not triggering, putting lotion on your hands or getting an essential oil, smelling that, smelling the lotion, nothing else matters but smelling the lotion and applying it to your hands, smelling that essential oil. And then call the hotline because you're doing the best you can, and you're making like such a courageous decision of role playing and practicing and setting boundaries and acknowledging like I deserve different. And that is huge, and that deserves to be celebrated even if it doesn't go to plan.
100%. Claire, I know we're at time. I just want to thank you so much for all of that information. I learn something new every single time a new guest sits down with me. So I just so appreciate all of the wealth of knowledge that you have, and for sharing that with people in a very accessible way. So if you know somebody who may have a difficult time with the holidays, please, please, please send this their way along with our hotline. Please don't forget the hotline number. Really important. You can go to our website, learn more about our counseling services. We've got individual therapy and group therapy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Both are completely free. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Please utilize the hotline. Please know you're not alone. And please be tender to yourself. But I just wanted to really thank you for having me. It's so much fun to we don't get to work together a lot. So it's just a fantastic experience to spend time with you and collab.
Truly. Well, Alexis, who is in my department, was on the last episode, and I'm like, I don't even see a lot of him either because we're both so much in the community.
For sure.
So it is very nice to sit down with you. And before we truly say goodbye to Claire, I want to ask, because we ask every guest, how do you keep yourself grounded?
In what capacity are we thinking of? Just in general, or after a difficult session or group, or
That's a really good question. Let's just say in general.
In general, I work out. I work out, and I think what is paramount to me being successful and combating vicarious trauma, burnout, it is a fulfilling home life. It is going home to people who love me and see me and make me laugh when I did not think I could laugh after the day I had, and who show up for me. And that, in my experience, if I have learned anything in the 4.5 years, is who am I going home to? And just a shout out to those folks that I do go home to, because they quite honestly are why I'm able to reground and come back to me, and it's invaluable. So yeah, I work out, but most importantly, the people who I go home to and show up for me.
That is beautiful, and I'm seeing a reoccurring theme between our guests that social support is so important. So again, I just want to shout out that definitely lean on your social support if it feels safe for you. And if that's not something that is safe for you right now, our hotline, Hartley House, can be that safe space for you. And not to be but I will share to really promote our support groups. I hear time and time again that it becomes a family in and of itself. And just to really honor that experience for our survivors, it's such a intimate
and profound experience to witness survivors connecting and seeing each other and getting it and being their family. So yeah, for sure. Like, our support groups are pretty great. So I would totally echo that.
Yes. And in most scenarios, I don't like to use like all or nothing thinking, but I would say I think in most scenarios in a group setting, you are talking with people who, like you said, they get the experience that you've been through because they've been through a similar experience. And that in of itself can be so healing because you don't need to explain. You can just be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And more times than not, someone shares something and they are feeling so heavy. And then they share it in a group, and the validation from other folks saying, I see you, I've been there, I know exactly what you're feeling. It's invaluable. I mean, groups, therapeutic groups are, for a survivor who's experienced isolation, is unlike anything. So yeah, absolutely. It's a very unique place to find people who get it.
Well, thank you so much, Claire, for all the amazing work you do at Hartley House. As always, please subscribe to Hartley House. Send this message to people who you think can benefit from it, and appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.